Leadership, a simple concept that moves the world, writes history, and drives the lives of millions of people around the world. This is a story that celebrates our leadership and makes us proud of who we are. Today, Latino Leaders Magazine crosses the path of the same leaders we've been interviewing for more than 18 years, making all of us that work at Latino Leaders Magazine proud of our past and excited about our future. Latino Leaders Magazine is confident that we will continue to inspire the leaders that will write the future pages of our history. We have witnessed the enormous potential and value of Latino leaders. Now, Latino Leaders Magazine wants to continue to serve them by connecting these leaders and thus inspiring the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host and publisher of Latino Leaders Magazine, Mr. Jorge Ferraiz.
Hi, welcome to the Maestro Awards in New York. For the first time ever, we have come to this wonderful city with lots of energy, dynamism, resilience, and beautiful and great examples of leadership. We are tonight here to celebrate 4 outstanding stories of leadership. People that have made this town their own territory to evolve and to grow their leadership. I want to thank our sponsors, Southwest Airlines and BMW, for supporting this program, which we are very proud of having in this fantastic and beautiful city. So again, welcome to the first ever Maestro Awards in New York 2021.
At Southwest Airlines, it's always been about heart. It's about loving people, about putting others first. It's about being more than an airline. It's about finding that one way to serve that makes each person feel special. It's about building resilience through connections that last. About being part of a community that helps one another, because distance shouldn't keep us from being neighbors. It's about living responsibly and doing things the Southwest way, which means we do it because we want to, not because we have to. Because whether in the air or on the ground, we believe community is more than a place. It's at the heart of what brings us together. We have a strong history of investing in our communities, economically sustaining communities at their core. Yet Southwest is much more than a partner. We champion causes and build connections that help cities thrive. Our heart is to do what's right. We want to protect our communities, respecting, valuing our resources. Our heart doesn't simply give back, it gives forward. Because we know that the most resilient communities are the ones with the strongest connections. And we believe the act of connecting can make the world feel a bit smaller and the future a little brighter. And it all starts with heart.
The 2021 Maestro Award in the category of leadership is to be presented to someone that has been involved in the community and has had a very successful financial, banking, and accounting career. Joe Mella has excelled and is a man that has been involved in many activities, advancing and supporting the community. A man admired and beloved by many others because of his involvement and his support for others. That is why the Latino Leaders Maestro Award in New York 2021 to leadership goes to Joe Mella.
Jorge, thank you for bringing us together this evening. You and your team connect leaders and inspire others through your publications and events. And to this year's award recipients, congratulations. Tonight, we celebrate you, your service to our community, and your many accomplishments. Thank you for leading with integrity, humility, and heart. I'm Laura Nieto, and I serve as the Director of Community Outreach at Southwest Airlines. While I wish we were together in person, it's truly a pleasure to be with you this evening. This year, Southwest celebrates its 50th anniversary of connecting people and championing communities. To commemorate this milestone, we're spreading kindness in fun and unique ways to inspire a kinder, more compassionate world. At Southwest Airlines, we believe community is more than a place. It's at the heart of what brings us together. It's been an honor to partner with Latino Leaders magazine for so many years. We've been able to see firsthand the power of celebrating Latino success stories can have on inspiring the next generation of leaders. Throughout the years, Southwest has been proud to work side by side with influential leaders of the Latino community, many of whom are recognized through the Maestro Awards. Tonight, I'm honored to have the opportunity to recognize Mr. Joe Mella, Global Lead for Strategic Outsourcing at Goldman Sachs, where he is responsible for the delivery of commercial results and governance for the firm's material engagements. During Mr. Mella's more than 3-decade-long career with Goldman Sachs, he has held many roles, including Chief Accounting Officer for the firm's finance division. The finance division represented approximately 10% of the firm's employee base and had an annual budget that exceeded $1 billion. Mr. Mella also had oversight of the division's global human resource functions and general management of the division's project office. Previous to that role, Mr. Mella was in the Human Capital Division and the global head of experienced hire recruiting of Goldman Sachs. He oversaw a team that was responsible for the sourcing and hiring of all Goldman Sachs employees throughout the firm across all levels and divisions and every region. He also managed 2 Goldman Sachs firm-wide programs, the Internal Mobility Program, which offers career development opportunities across regions and divisions of the firm, and the Employee Referral Program, through which Goldman Sachs employees identify talent for the firm. Mr. Mella is on the Corporate Advisory Board for the Association of Latino Professionals for America, Chairman of the Advisory Board and Governing Board member to the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, and was recently on the Board of Directors for the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the 58,000 Southwest Airlines employees, it is my privilege and my honor to present the Maestro Award for Leadership to Mr. Joe Mella.
Hi, I'm Ramiro Cavazos, President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Felicidades to Jorge Ferraiz, the publisher of Latino Leaders magazine, for the great work that he does representing our Latino business community. Tonight, we're celebrating 4 tremendous Maestros, leaders in the Latino community that are being recognized. I'm honored that one of the 4 leaders is Joe Mella with Goldman Sachs, who most recently was on the board of directors of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and chaired our finance committee. Brilliant corporate leader. Thank you, Joe, for all of your hard work. I also want to recognize and congratulate Maria Hinojosa with Futuro Media. She's a longtime friend, a great leader and a wonderful representative for our community. Richard Carrion, congratulations also to him with Banco Popular, the great work that he does, and of course the representation of Robert Fernandez with Científico Latino and the powerful work that he does at Columbia University. Felicidades to all 4 of these great leaders, and it's an honor to be here with you this evening.
While we're in New Jersey, I grew up actually in New York. I grew up in one of the suburbs in Staten Island. A small home, maybe 1,000 square feet, perhaps the size of the room we're in today, actually. And a brother and sister, and didn't have a lot. And when you only have 1,000 square feet, you can't put a lot in it. But one thing that was important to us was family first. And we were big on celebrating, so food was important, and gathering around the table. I do remember that often. In fact, I remember my uncle even building a special table for us to eat around. But you know, we were happy always, didn't know any better, and the neighborhood was similar, so that was fine. But one of the things that was probably important in my family was education. and doing things well as best you can, whether it was sports, school, etc. You didn't have to be first, but you had to do the best you can. And then regarding education, we did as good as you could do. We were fortunate. While my dad may have worked 2 jobs, my mom, who was a homemaker, also did piecemeal work in the basement. In fact, we even helped her. I think today it would be almost called labor that you're not allowed to have kids do, but we did it anyway. I think we made a penny a piece for each piece we made. So not a lot of money. But in any case, it helped because we went to private school and it was difficult. Elementary school was easy, and then I went to a all-boy high school, which was unique, but it was good for those that qualified. And well, I did well there and played on the soccer team, and I enjoyed it. I was one of only 2 people who made the varsity team, and that was exciting. Didn't know what that meant, and my family didn't know anything a lot about soccer, but I played it. And the important part was everybody wanted to go at some point to college. And while elementary school was easy, high school was easy, I didn't actually know how to get into college. My family had never been to college. None of my cousins, aunts, uncles, no one had ever been. So for me, ironically enough, I had done very well on the SAT scores, and I did well in school in general. And I think I may have been number 9 or 10 in the high school of the kids. And Father Gannon came to me in the hallway one day and said, "Mella, where are you going to college?" And I must have had that look of fear of some kind. And he knew that I probably didn't apply properly or apply at all. And I remember him grab me by the ear. I don't know if you're allowed to grab kids by the ear anymore, but in those days you did. And he brought me into his office and said, "Well, why didn't you apply? I need to put you on the list of where our top students are going." So I said, "Well, I just didn't think of it. I didn't know what to do." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I remember my dad saying, "You know what, maybe you should be an engineer. You're good at science, good at math." Okay, good enough for me. So that's what I was going to pick. And then so Father Gannon said, "Well, what college do you want to go?" I said, "Well, I need to be local," because I didn't even know that you can sleep away at college. So he actually got on the phone and called Rutgers University, which when you're in Staten Island, not far, because I couldn't afford to live there. So he called and somehow got me in and said, "Got to fill out some paperwork and have it in by the end of the week." And lo and behold, I was on my way to Rutgers University to become an engineer. And one of the things that was important to me while I did that is I had to work. I wasn't fortunate enough just to go to school. I worked several jobs actually to help a combination pay for that as well as any fun or games that I wanted to have, and did that. And during college did many different jobs. Some jobs are kind of unique. Besides, I sold vacuum cleaners door to door, newspaper boy, and the job that I was proud of at the time was I was a dishwasher at the local Holiday Inn hotel that had a restaurant. But the positive news of that job was, besides they paid me, that's where I met my current bride, Kathy, and that was 42 years ago. And so that was a positive, I guess, in the scheme of it. So maybe it was good that I had those kind of jobs. And as an engineer, I actually gave it a shot. I worked for Johnson & Johnson. I was in baby powder filling. It was more about a computer job, and did well at that. And then because they had some problems with one of their medicines, I think it was Tylenol or something, and wasn't able to go full-time, so I ended up full-time at a company called ADP, or Automatic Data Processing, in their engineering department. But while I did that and enjoyed that, one of the years, in fact, I lived in California. For when you're 23 years old and somebody relocates you to California, that's pretty exciting. But all of my summers in college, I worked for a bank on Wall Street, literally on Wall Street. So that's where my heart was. When I first joined, first of all, it was unique because I joined the finance division. And as I mentioned, I'm an engineer by background. So although I'm an industrial engineer, so I took a lot of the accounting and finance, so I understood the high level. I didn't understand it all. But what I was unique about is I used to ask questions nobody else would ask. So when they talk about diversity of thought, while the room may have been filled with a mix of people, they were mostly finance and accounting folks. I would ask from an engineering angle, so always my questions were just unique and different. That actually helped a lot. Being able to ask a question from an angle nobody would have thought of. So from that, I've had several different roles. But when I first joined, I said to myself, "Oh, this place is crazy. I probably could do it a year or two." But what has happened was it growing. There was only 5,000 employees there at the time, small firm, private. Now 40 some odd thousand and public. and people know about it. In those days, nobody knew about it. In fact, when I used to say I got a job at Goldman Sachs, people thought I was working in jewelry because it was gold. But in any case, most of the roles, in fact, almost I think every role I had was more of somebody picking me rather than me aiming for something based on change or evolution at the firm. So that's always been the fun part of it, because it's been fires that, those that run to the fire and put them out actually get recognized. So you have to be able to willing to do that. And I've done that in different divisions. Like I said, even going to Europe and working there for 4 years, which ended up to be a lot of fun and opportunity. And I continue to leverage that knowledge and help others with that same, because many people think you have to have a certain background to do certain things, and that's always not the case. Almost any background can be leveraged in different ways. I do read and see a lot that on boards, we as a country do not have as diverse board leadership as we may like. But once again, I don't know how much of that is time. There's no one has patience though, right? So we have grown from 0 to maybe a couple of percent, but to get it to 10 and 20% is going to take us a few more years. And so we need some kind of catalyst to help. I think over the last couple of years, I think some of that openness of what's happening, what you see on television or the newspapers, will get people there. But I think that's going to be a critical component, because once people can see somebody who looks like them, sounds like them, been where they've been, I think they'll get there. I think education still is going to be one of the most important aspects for anyone to be successful in business, and finding leaders that have been there before. Because when I started, there was probably not as many folks that thought like me. But today, I think the good news is people are willing to do that. And I think it's broader in the whole country, right? If you look back many years ago, it would only been certain parts of New York City or certain parts of Florida or California or Texas. I think the culture of, the broad culture of the whole country, I should say, because it's not just Hispanic, it's or Black or Asian, it's everyone, right? There's some cultures that are newer to the firm in the last 50 years that were not here 100 years ago or so. So I think it's time, but I think there needs to be a catalyst to speed it up in some cases. I would say I've learned a lot from senior leaders, as well as I've learned a lot from more junior people. And the thing that's important is, beyond leading, is listening. So there's been many people that I've admired along my road or my journey, which I've been fortunate. I may have put a lot of work in, it wasn't easy, but fortunate at the end. But one leader that I could think of is Raymond Arroyo, who has done an excellent job in helping others. He does it, he executes flawlessly, but silently. Not a person that looks for fame in any way, but often leading a hand out and helping anywhere from the most junior to the most senior people. And he could do it behind the scenes. He could do it in front of you. But he has been probably one of the greater leaders that probably deserves even more recognition than he has. I know he's gotten some terrific recognition, but he probably can get even more for what he's done. One of the best networkers I've ever met in my career, in fact. For fun, I'm all about the event. So having friends, family together in the room we're in fact, or out going on vacation with, being with my kids. Because I've worked a lot over those many years, I probably missed some things I shouldn't have, but I did. So I try to make it up as best I can now. But having fun with food and drink, particularly wine, I really enjoy. And once I learn what people like, I like to make sure I have that available to them, if it's not wine or whatever it may be. But friends and family and the event is critical. In fact, when we go out to eat, sometimes people think a certain meal could be one of the most basic meals I often order, and people think that may be my favorite. And the reason for it is I don't want to concentrate on the food, I want to concentrate on the conversation, because I can get that food anytime, but this conversation will come and go. So that's why I call it, it's about the event. For me, it's probably now about my kids, seeing them do well, and I think they've done well already, both successful. My son has an accountant with a Big 4 accounting firm. My daughter was a registered nurse with a fairly large trauma hospital in Jersey City. So for me, it's all going to be about that. And spending more time with friends and family. Including, we're fortunate here in this house that both sets of grandparents are still around, so spending time with them is enjoyable, particularly for my kids. And just being with my wife and kids will be the most critical piece for the next 25, 30 years of my life. Jorge, thank you so much. And I want to thank Latino Leaders Magazine, as well as my family and the firm of Goldman Sachs that's helped me over 34 years and created opportunities that I could have perhaps never dreamed of. They've also created opportunities where I've been able to do things outside the firm that I may not have thought that I could ever do. So I want to thank everyone involved in this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
A great example of leadership, a fierce voice for the Latino journalism and press. Maria Hinojosa is one of the best examples we can find out there of someone who has taken her profession to the top, to become one of the most respected figures in the media in the US for the Latino community. That's why the Maestro Awards in New York 2021 in the category of professional achievement goes to Maria Hinojosa.
I end up in the United States, in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago in the 1960s because my dad, who was born in Tampico, Mexico, was a nerd, a scientific nerd. His values were that there was a mission, something that he wanted to do, which I think in the 1950s in Mexico, you can imagine my father saying, well, I want to research how to help people who are deaf have a chance to hear. And probably a lot of people said, estás loco, Raúl Hinojosa. But he became a medical doctor and followed his passion and committed to this mission. And that's how we end up in Chicago. I think growing up in Chicago at this time, my overwhelming experience was I was very happy. But there were not a lot of people like me in my school. I was in El Barrio Mexicano every weekend because that's where we would go hacer compras, and that's where I felt like, oh, yeah, this is home. And so from a very early age, I was always crossing borders between neighborhoods. Later, we would drive from Chicago all the way to Mexico, drive through Mexico. And so I think I followed in my grandmother and my mother's footsteps in this very Mexican thing called soy una pata de perro. I'm always out on the street, I'm walking around, I'm meeting people, I'm engaging people. So the values of curiosity and frankly, humility were very important to me, but also my mom understood her power. And so if anybody disrespected us or her, cuidadito, but also a tremendous amount of sense of giving. And I think I understood that I had privilege, and therefore I had to share this privilege. And that's what leads me to ultimately take the privilege that I had going to a private high school, going to Barnard, part of Columbia University, to then being the first Latina hired at pretty much every newsroom where I worked. And feeling like, even though I was a fish out of water, I talk a lot about imposter syndrome, just like, what am I doing here? I'm going to get discovered. I mean, they're going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing. But I felt like I had made it into these places, and therefore I had to eat my fear. Tenía que comerme el miedo, saying I learned from my husband, the Dominican artist Herman Perez, and push forward. And I think this sense of responsibility, of understanding the privilege that I have, has really been central in my life, leading me up to the point where I am today. The issue of empowered women was a very big, important part of the conversation in my family. And it was the most difficult conversation, apart from the cultural identity ones, was the fact that we were growing up and my family was raising American women, teenage women, at a time of a feminist revolution. And so this was confusing for my father. For my mother, it was like, oh, this is what we're talking about. And so for me, it was always understood that I was going to go to higher education. I didn't think about becoming a journalist because there were none who looked like me in the United States of America. There were Mexican women journalists, and I think that's where the seed was planted for me. It was Mexican women journalists. And so basically I start doing college radio, and that changed everything. Doing college radio, feeling like a bit of a rebel, definitely connecting with a lot of artists in New York City. This allowed me to understand that I had a voice. And I was seeing everything that was happening with Latinos and Latinas in New York City. After having been in Chicago, that was a very Mexican city. And then this is a very Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban city and everything else. And I think I was like, this thing about being Latino or Latina, it's bigger than people are getting. It's really big. And I think that was something that also moved me as a journalist and then later as a media entrepreneur. In 2010, I created Futuro Media, and I did not like to call myself a media entrepreneur. I felt like that was too big. But in fact, that's what I was, and that's what I am. I am a media entrepreneur. In my core, I'm a journalist, and doing journalism is the thing that makes me the happiest. And so the newest thing that I have launched is that I created my own unit within Futuro Media. And I now am running my own investigative unit. So basically, I'm 60 Minutes now. There is no one else that has a unit, a national unit in English, doing investigative work specifically on Latinos and Latinas, along with issues around immigration. So that's the next big thing for me, which is that holding even more people and more powerful people accountable for our reality. Because how is it possible that things, after I've been reporting on this community for 30 years, how is it possible that things have gotten worse? When we've been shining a light and saying this is an issue, this is a problem, Latinos and Latinas are a massive growth factor for this country. We are, talk about values, our family values, what we bring, our beliefs, our commitment, our dreams. And so we're having to fight for that. Because I feel infinitely inspired by so many Latinos and Latinas and immigrants and refugees, I continue to push my own self so that I have an investigative unit. Futuro Media launched Futuro Studios, which this year dropped some of the most amazing podcasts as per critical acclaim. We dropped Suave, we dropped Anything for Selena, we dropped La Brega, we most recently dropped Loud, the history of reggaeton with Ivy Queen. So we are doing the investigative work, but we're also creatively really pushing the boundaries on using audio and podcasts to tell our stories. And there's so much happening. Just at the end of October, I'm dropping my first ever dramatic podcast with a cast of actors, and I'm co-executive producing this. So that I'm trying to inspire others, Latinos and Latinas, obviously, to, as opposed to feeling the imposter syndrome where we walk around thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get found out. I'm actually saying, let's take off the gloves and just go as big as we possibly can be. What's stopping us? There should be nothing. Is it scary? Oh, yes, but so is everything. So for Futuro Media, olvídate que we are now, the next decade is the decade of making crazy dreams come true, and we are well on our way. I take this very seriously. I don't remember being as intense about this, about these parts of my life. I think when you're raising kids and you're trying to have a job, there's a lot that comes up. But now, and especially during the last administration, there was a lot of effort to stay grounded and stay rooted, to find something that gave meaning, right? So I meditate every day. I'm a boxer and I work out pretty intensely. So if you follow me on Instagram, you see, the things that I do to bring joy into my life are very public because I want to show people. Yes, you know me as this hard-edged journalist, in very sad stories, but I'm a bird watcher, even though I don't have a pair of professional binoculars. I'm a succulent lover. Who knew? I have dozens of succulents all over my apartment here in New York City. Maybe you can see some of them over here behind me. I recently got a dog. It was kind of right before the pandemic. And so I've become a dog person, even though we have 2 cats. I love dancing and I love music. And so these are all things that I incorporate into my life. And I'm very spiritual. I understand that I'm here for a reason. And my ancestors keep me very focused on what I have to do. So bringing joy and finding things that take my mind out of the daily suffering is an essential part of my life, because you know who talked about daily suffering? Los Maya in the Popol Vuh. They were the ones who said, La vida es un valle de sufrimiento. It's a valley of tears, valle de lágrimas y sufrimiento. So we have suffering that is part of the reality of being alive and human. And so I'm about finding joy and alegría. I love the fact that I'm receiving an award that's called the Maestro Award or Maestra Award, because I actually love this word. It's such a kind of the slang from Mexico City, and I'm from Mexico City. So I love that I'm getting, órale maestra, I'm getting that award. And also, you're right. This is an award that recognizes our capacity to lead, but it is about teaching, right? It is about giving. It is about sharing. It is, as you say, a Latino leader is like a conductor. And so for me, that just means I take this even more, with so much more responsibility, right? Understanding that I can be seen as un ejemplo means that that's what a maestro always is, right? Es un gran ejemplo. And so I assume and accept this award con mucha humildad, because I know what it means in our community to say, bravo, maestro, brava, maestra. And I hear you. Thank you.
Entrepreneurship is one of the finest characteristics of leaders. An icon of entrepreneurship and business in Puerto Rico, in the US, and in the whole world. Descendant from a family of visionaries. Also, a family that also likes to give back. That is the characteristics of Richard Carrion, the Maestro Award in the category of entrepreneurship in New York City 2021.
Many people think that my grandfather founded Banco Popular. The truth is, my grandfather was born in 1891, and the bank was founded in 1893. So while he was a very precocious guy, he wasn't that precocious. The fact is, his older brother was among the founders of the bank, but the bank didn't really have one founder. It was a group of people who got together behind a social idea. In the late 20s, my grandfather did buy a majority of the bank and really took over the bank and gave the bank a character which, true to its roots, still lasts to this day, I dare say. Mm-hmm. So that's the real story. But everybody assumes that he founded it. And there was a Carrion, one of his brothers, was among the group of founders. 1961, we opened our first office in New York, but until 1961, it was all Puerto Rico. Grew here. I often say, it was a very difficult time because when he bought into the bank, there was a major hurricane in 1928, San Felipe, and then of course you had a depression. So this was, to be able to make it through there, they say that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that made us strong, and this bank has endured many difficult situations, and we have been fortunate enough to come through it, and every time we come through it, we come out of it stronger, and again, true to the founding ideas, which has to do with the communities that we serve, has to do with enhancing the social, not only the economic welfare of the communities that we serve, but also the social welfare. And we believe we cannot prosper unless the communities we are in also prosper. And that has been an idea that has been with us for over 100 years. Well, I have a degree, a bachelor's degree from the Wharton School in Pennsylvania, at the University of Pennsylvania. And then at the time, I went to MIT for my master's degree in information systems, which was what they called it in those days. And I have to tell you, the last thing on my mind was that I was going to return to Puerto Rico, much less work in Banco Popular, because I always felt that no matter what I did, I would always be, my grandfather's grandson and my father's son. But the summer of '76, my uncle, who at the time was president, my father was chairman of the bank, my uncle said, "What are you doing this summer?" And the fact is I did need some money. And he said, "Why don't you come and work for us?" So I worked in the programming division the summer of 1976. And they're still trying me out. I think I'm going to stay a little longer, but I've been here since May 24th of 1976. So it's been a long trial period, but I was hooked immediately. It's been something that's been part of my life, my family, and I have dedicated over 40 years to this institution. It was a process. They kept moving me around. I worked in the programming division. I worked in the controllers division. My undergraduate degree was in accounting and finance, so they moved me around. Worked in the credit division. In '78, we had a major merger, acquisition of Banco Credito, which was a bank that failed. And I then was made controller of the bank. So I really had all the accounting and all the information coming in. And soon after, I really came up on the operations side, and I led the teams that really were responsible for automating the bank, automating all of the bank operations, creating the first ATM network. We created a logo that is still very important in Puerto Rico at this time, called ATH, a toda hora, at all hours. That was our logo, and it's been extremely successful. So that was really what drove me up until 1985, when I was made president of the bank. I have been here over 40 years. He said my first 30-odd years were very easy. Then the next 10 years were a lot more difficult. You had to go through the crisis, the financial crisis of 2010, and that really tested us. That really was the most difficult period of my life. Going through that transition, we had to sell some things, which is something that was not the first thing that came to my mind. We had to reduce expenses, and that meant laying off people, and that really went against the grain for me. So I would tell you that financial crisis really was the most difficult period for me, and we really had to change the whole view of the bank. At the time, we were focused on growing in the mainland USA. We had to reduce and just focus not on so many markets, but on basically 2 markets, which is the New York, New Jersey metro area and Miami. So we had to sell those operations in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Orlando, and that was painful for me because we had really spent a lot of time and a lot of emotion on setting these up, and we just had to make tough decisions in difficult times, and those were difficult times, and those were the decisions we had to take. We also had to spin out our technology subsidiary, and as I told you earlier, technology has always been a very important dimension in my life and my career, so we had to sell 51% of that to raise capital. So it was, I would say, the years from 2009 to 2012 were probably the most difficult period for me. But I didn't go through a depression, I didn't go through a world war, but certainly those periods were the most difficult for me. I fought all my life for the independence of this organization. And it's very important to me, and it was very important to leave a leadership team that shares that vision, that understands the roots of this organization, and that can adapt it to the future and continue its growth. I also want to leave things for my country, which is extremely important to me, and that is mostly in the area of education. We are doing projects now in the foundation. We are starting a project that is based on a model that I became aware of in Pittsburgh by a fellow called Bill Strickland, where it exposes young kids to art, young high school kids. It's an after-school program to teach them about the arts. And then the other half is adults learning a trade so that they can be employed and they can be part of the workforce and earn money and grow. So that is a project that I would like to leave behind. The foundation also has many areas many areas of education that we're focused on. We even have started a small school for children to use it as a demonstration project of how we can build better schools at a very cost-effective price and much better academic results. So these are things that are important to me, and more important to me than lying on a beach. I love to lie on a beach, but I think leaving things behind. I'm also a frustrated architect or urbanist, so we have plans to continue the expansion of this campus here in Atorrey, which is part of San Juan, and those hopefully will come to fruition in the next 3 or 4 years. So I think those are the things I want to leave behind. I want to make sure my children have a much better environment to grow in, and for my grandchildren to grow in than it was when I found it. And mostly that there is hope in Puerto Rico.
Gracias a usted y
Gracias.
muchas felicidades.
Cómo no. Very pleased and very honored to receive this award, and I thank Latino leaders for this honor.
Emerging leaders and young leaders are the future. That's why Latino leaders partnered with BMW, a great car company, to create the category of Ultimate Drive. That drive that will make these leaders go into the future and create the career and the leadership they want to be. This year, the Maestro Awards in New York is going to be presented in the Ultimate Drive category to Robert Fernandez.
Hola, mi gente. My name is Janady Velasquez, and I am honored to be here tonight on behalf of BMW North America during the Latino Leaders Maestro Award ceremony. BMW has a long-standing sponsorship with the Maestros Award with a shared goal of connecting leaders and inspiring the future. Tonight, we do just that, as I have the special privilege in presenting Robert Fernandez with the 2021 New York City BMW Ultimate Drive Award for his diligence in creating opportunities among groups who have frequently and systematically been overlooked. Robert, you are definitely a pillar within the Latino, science, and scholar community. Your contributions have seen no bounds. You have stoically shared your life's journey in such a way that makes us Latinos say, adelante. Felicidades and know que siempre estamos contigo. Adiós y gracias.
My family was born in Lima, Peru, and it was my mom, my dad, and my younger brother and me. So at the age of 4, we came to the United States in New Jersey. But something I didn't know at the time was that my family came here undocumented. And when I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, I remember mainly it was my mom taking care of my younger brother and me. Both my parents were, working full time as pretty much like the Latino immigrant mentality. And I remember I found out I was undocumented when I was applying to college. So it was my senior year of high school. And because I was the first to go to college in the United States, I didn't really have any guidance on applying to colleges. Like, I didn't know there were deadlines for these universities, let alone what universities could accept me. So I ended up missing the deadline. And one day there was a community college representative for the local community college, Union County College in Cranford, New Jersey. And they passed out a form that said pretty much name, information, social security. And I didn't really know what my social was at the time, so I called my mom, and I was like, "Ma, ¿cuál es mi social?" And she was like, "Tú no tienes uno, hijo." And that's kind of how I sunk in that I was undocumented and what that meant. But I still submitted the application, and I ended up getting accepted to community college, and that was Union County College. So at community college, I majored in business administration. And there it was kind of where I told myself, like, even if I was undocumented, I'm still gonna go as high as I can go, and I'm gonna take the best advantage of whatever resources are in this college. So I ended up graduating with a degree in business administration, I think a 3.9 GPA, and I was involved in several extracurricular activities to give back to the community. And this is kind of when I needed to know what was my next step. And the good thing is that a year before I finished community college, I had the option of taking a biology or astronomy class. Ended up taking a biology class. And in here, this was the first time that I had a really good understanding of biology. I found a mentor, Dr. Felton, who really cared about investing in me for the first time. And I was like, oh wow, like I know I like biology. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I wanna see where this goes. So another friend of mine who was undocumented told me about the CUNY system in New York, City University of New York, that accepts undocumented students. So I ended up applying to Queens College and then later on to York College that I transferred. And I pretty much moved to New York with no more than $400 to my name. And then from there on, I ended up working as a busboy and as a deli worker, and I saved up enough money to attend York College. And after I've been there a year, I qualified for in-state tuition, which is very affordable. So at York College is when one day I was taking a biology laboratory course, and one of the professors, Dr. Simon, told me, have you thought about doing research? Because I was doing good in my lab classes. And because she told me, have you thought about doing research, that opened up another world for me. Like, not only did I want to major in biology, like, what is this research experience? What does it mean to be a scientist? So I ended up working in her lab for roughly a year and a half. And because of her mentorship, not only did I get awards, got research publication from the work I've done in her lab, but from collaborations from her lab, I presented at national conferences, but I also got accepted to a summer research program at Princeton University. But because she invested in me, other mentors in the biology department also invested in me. And it kind of led to like a domino effect where I learned, oh, this is what a master's was, this is what a PhD was. And then like, oh, this is how you apply for a PhD. And that's kind of how my next step in my journey was getting accepted for a PhD in molecular biophysics and biochemistry at Yale, all because of good mentors in the community at York. One path that I'm interested in is being an academic professor, where I would lead my own research lab and I would train other underrepresented students how to become professors, go into biotech, whatever field they want. Just because for me, I have the philosophy that a PhD is no longer, I want to be a professor. A PhD is, how can we find a job that helps us ensure financial freedom in the future and more opportunities for people like us. So for example, during a PhD, I've seen people go into consulting, into biotech, into academia, science policy, science journalism. And my job, my future job as a professor of a research lab, for a principal investigator is a specific term, would be to train them to become an independent scientist so they can do whatever career they're passionate about in the future. So that's one path I'm interested in. Another path that I really want to look forward is expanding Scientifico Latino. Everything that we've done in helping underrepresented students get accepted into grad school, in addition to other mentorship programs where we mentor students currently in grad school during their first years to make sure that they are empowered and welcome during the first year of grad school, which is very vital. This is kind of like a dream I have. I would love to one day start science centers all across the world where anybody can go at any level, whether you're in high school, college. I want to learn how to go into college in science. I want to learn how to go to grad school and see, here are all the preparation and resources to get you to the next step, but here are people who look like you in your field. Here are people who like otros Latinos, Latinas, like everybody who looks like you in their field. That way you don't have to feel alone. Just because like too often we're told, like if you think of a professor, or sorry, if you think of a scientist, most people would say Albert Einstein. But if someone says, who's a black scientist? Who's a Latino scientist? Like, it takes time to think about it, especially if you're starting off. So I'm hoping to change those dynamics in the future. Well, that's actually one of the good things as a scientist. It's kind of like you make your own schedule. You like, your boss is never there, like you have to be in lab by 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. My lab, there's 25 people at my lab. It's a big lab. Everyone has their own different projects. Everyone has, for the most part, most of them have families, they have kids that they're taking care of, and they're also doing research full time. So everyone has different schedules. But for me, pretty much, I always start out with a basic coffee and a bagel, some orange juice. I go to lab anywhere from 9 to 10 a.m. And a lot of my first couple of hours is let me take care of any important correspondence emails, any students, writing letters of recommendation, reading scientific papers. And then once I take care of the majority of that, then I was like, okay, let me write out the experiments that I have planned for the day, for the week. And then let me get started on it, go take a break for lunch, and then continue the experiments. And this really varies. There are some days where I stay till 5 to 6. There are some days where it's 9 to 10 p.m. It really depends on what experiment you have going on that day. And also my students have different schedules, and they come in at different times as well. And I do my best to be there whenever they need help planning their experiments. So pretty much my life mainly is science, Scientifico Latino, and my students. But outside of that, kind of something that I learned during my PhD is that I used to be like a huge workaholic, where the first 6 years I would just like work like crazy. But afterwards I learned that there's more to life than science. Being a scientist is not I'm not my entire life. It's part of my life. It's an identity that's part of me, but it's not everything. There's more to life than just being a scientist. I'm also in science outreach, and I'm also a mentor. So for me, I learned that I also have to make time for my family. I have to make time for my friends. So the good thing is my family's in New Jersey, so I do my best to visit every so often. And also my mom definitely has been here a couple of times, as well as my dad, enjoying like the good lomo saltado. So I'm Peruvian, so I always do my best during my free time to find like what are the good Peruvian spots in the city. And also one of my friends, he is a musician, so he has a band called The Phoenix Within, and we actually went in the same lab together as an undergrad at college. So we worked together in the same lab, and he stayed at York College as a lab technician, and he ended up pursuing music full time. And every once in a while, like I go to his shows, or we go back and forth in ideas of like the lyrics of songs. Every once in a while, I also write down either some poetry or some, I'm trying to get into a stand-up a little bit, so I'm like writing down jokes as well. So it's kind of like, I also wanted to do more in the artistic side. So I'm working on writing like short novels or stories on pretty much the immigrant experience. And that's something probably is gonna take me a couple years, but it's kind of like, there's not, your career is not everything. You could have, in my opinion at least, you could have several different passions, several different careers, and I like exploring everything that I am very passionate about.
It's our privilege, Robert, to give you this award. Congratulations on all the things that you have done, and also good luck with the many other things that you are going to do.
Thank you.
And it is our pleasure to give you this award to you.
Thank you. I'm very honored. And I just really want to thank my family, my friends, my mentors, my students, my community that have gotten me this far. And I look forward to what the future holds as I continue in academia. And thank you once again, everybody.
This has been the 2021 first ever Latino Leaders Magazine Maestro Awards in New York. We are very happy to have come to this wonderful town full of energy and leadership stories to recognize those leaders that are paving the way, and with their examples are showing others what's the potential of our Latino leaders. 4 fantastic stories tonight that are a real example of leadership. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to thank also and acknowledge the great support that we have from BMW and Southwest Airlines, our sponsors. So on behalf of Latino leaders, our staff, I want to thank you for joining us and hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much.